Did you hear that? Hey, everybody. Glad to be here with you. This is...
Morning verses.
No, I mean you.
Oh.
Who are you?
Oh.
You're wearing your mic, right? You got your mic on, yeah. This is Morning Verses it is, but this is my wife. I thought, your phone is speaking. I thought this would be a lot better if there was someone pretty on here. So, you're welcome. All right, so... Today we're going to do something, we're still in the Gospel of John, but we're going to take a specific look, and I haven't told you what we're doing yet.
I have no clue. I just walked up here.
Because I think you'd get nervous. I thought you'd get nervous if I told you what it was beforehand.
Now I'm nervous.
You should be. So we're looking in the Gospel of John, but we're gonna like tomorrow and maybe the next day, we're gonna look at this story in the Gospel of John a little bit more as a sequential story. But there's one point that I don't know that it's necessarily the point of the story, but we do learn something from this story that applies to us today, and it might surprise you what it is. And so I wanted to look at this specifically today, and then tomorrow and the next day we'll look at the story kind of as a story. So we're going to go to, we're in John chapter 5. We'll have the verses up on the screen, but if you want to look in your Bible, you can. But here's what it says. Why don't you read this for us?
All right, John chapter 5, verse 5. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and realized he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to get well?"
Okay, so this is a setup for, if you've read the Gospel of John, you know what's going to happen. Do you recall this story? Yeah, so what ultimately is going to happen?
He's going to get well.
He's going to get well. He's going to get healthy. So this is a guy who is disabled, probably meant he couldn't walk, maybe something wrong with his legs. And so I've got a question for you, and this is the question. Do you believe that all who are sick will be healed from their illness if they have enough faith? Now, you can see why this is an important question right now, because we are in a pandemic. And this is one of the mentalities of a certain group of teachers. And I want to be, just by the way, I want to be respectful today. We always, when we're broadcasting or whatever, we always try to be really positive. When we're not broadcasting, we're total pessimists. But when we're broadcasting, we want to be positive, and we don't want to bash anybody or slam anybody. So we want to be respectful, but we also see the need to call things what they are. And so there are groups of teachers out there that teach that if you have enough faith, then you will be healed. And they go to certain stories in the Bible to supposedly prove that. This story is not one they usually go to, and I'll show you why. Notice what happens next. This is a few verses later. Why don't you read that for us?
"Get up," Jesus told him. "Pick up your mat and walk." Instantly the man got well, picked up his mat, and started to walk.
Now, if I were a faith healer teacher, here's what I would do with this story. I would stop right there. That would be the end of the story. Say, way to go, Jesus. Now let's heal some folks. But notice what happens. And as part of that, what we would do is we'd say, you can be healed too if you have enough faith. But notice what the story goes on to say. This is a few verses later. So this is the Pharisees talking to the man who had been healed. Now, it was the Sabbath, and he's carrying his mat, which you weren't supposed to do according to the rabbi rules. So why don't you read that for us?
"Who is this man who told you, 'Pick up your mat and walk'?" they asked. But the man who was healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there.
Okay. So let's just think about the theology that if you have enough faith, you will be healed. Was this guy healed because of his faith? That would be sort of a discussion question, but I'm just for us to talk about. So what do you think? What do you see in there? Do you see was he healed?
It looks like he's just doing what Jesus is telling him to do.
Yeah. Now notice verse 13. So he's asked, who was the guy? Basically, he's asked, who was the guy that healed you? Notice what he says. But the man who was healed did not know who it was. He didn't know Jesus. He didn't know anything about Jesus. Jesus was a famous character, but apparently this guy didn't know him. So was he healed because he had faith in Jesus? No, He didn't even know who he was. He was just some guy that walked up and said, "Get up," and he was able to get up. So he could sort of surmise at that point that, yeah, maybe this was a supernatural guy. But until the moment that he got up, he didn't even know that that was possible. So here's the point. Maybe let's put it as a discussion question. Why is it significant that the man who was healed didn't know who Jesus was and yet still got healed? Why is that significant? So put your ideas in the comment section, but I can hardly resist telling you my idea because that's just what I do. But how does it strike you? Do you kind of see the thread of thought here that I'm driving towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think he didn't even know his name, and so how could he have faith in him?
Yeah. So usually what someone who's sort of in the health wealth teaching, what they'll usually teach is that you have to have faith first and then healing comes after that. And now this is a really convenient thing for those that are supposedly healing, because what it does is if you don't get a healing, it's not the healer's fault, it's the person who's sick, which is not how Jesus' healing worked, at least in this story. The guy had no faith in Jesus because he didn't know who he was. We don't even know if he had faith at all. He could have been an atheist for all we know, because he doesn't say anything about God or whatever. So his healing has nothing to do with faith in this story. Now, there are other places that do seem to connect faith and some miracles, but in this story at least, there is a healing that happens that has nothing to do with faith. So it means that if healing does happen, I'm not saying whether it does or it doesn't, but if healing does happen, it doesn't always have to do with faith when Jesus is involved. So here's the point of this question. Why is it significant that the man who was healed didn't know who Jesus was and yet still got healed? Here's the bottom line. I think those who use that line of thought to say that you could get healed if you have enough faith, I think they're missing some of these stories. I think they're missing some of how the healing stories work, because let's remember that this guy was sick for 38 years. There was 38 years where he wasn't healed, and God used this story. There's another man in John 9 where Jesus actually says that this guy was sick so that it could prove a point, basically. I mean, it's hard to wrap our minds around that, but we have to be really careful when we go down that line of thought saying, if you have enough faith, you'll be healed. Now, here's another irony. Where are all of the faith healers right now? I mean, if there are people who can summon the ability to heal people, first of all, why aren't they having church services? Why aren't they emptying the hospitals? I mean, it just, to me, and I know this is controversial, and this is why I didn't tell you what we were going to talk about, because she's probably feeling nervous right now. Like, what is he going to say? But I think this is a great dividing line for us to look at people who have claimed certain supernatural abilities, and ultimately now they've gotten very quiet. I mean, that's ultimately what we're seeing. I want to show you one more verse. And again, I want to be respectful with this, but I also feel like this is an important thing. I'm sort of feeling like this quarantine, in a way, could be a reset button for a lot of people. It could be a reset button where we stop and we kind of analyze what's going on and say, was I in a certain faith tradition that maybe wasn't as honest and clear as it could have been. Let's look at this one verse, and this is not in John, this is in Timothy. I'll read this one because I feel your nervousness about where I'm going with this, but we're almost done. 1 Timothy 6:5 says this: people whose minds are depraved and deprived of the truth, who imagine that godliness is a way to material gain. From such withdraw yourself. Now that's two translations, by the way. That's CSB and New King James. I put them together because they both have different wordings on the end. But here's what it's talking about. It's talking about this idea that there are people out there that are going to use the faith as a means for material gain. And what it tells us to do is to withdraw ourselves from those people. So here's our discussion question. Let me make a dividing line here. There are those who teach that if you have enough faith, you'll be wealthy and you'll be healthy. But there are also those who believe, it's almost like a faith superstition, that if you're obeying, if you're doing what God wants you to do, then you'll be healthy and you'll be wealthy. And both really fall under this category, because notice what it says. It says that who imagine that godliness is a way to material gain. So a teacher, like a teacher who's teaching that, could be teaching that, but someone could actually just believe that. Somebody could believe that without really even being in a church that teaches that. And so I'd have that question for you. Do you feel like your situation is based on, your financial situation and your health situation is based on your obedience to God? The bottom line is some great people, some godly people are going to have trouble. We know it. In fact, we're basically promised that. And so if you are in a faith tradition that says if you have enough faith, you'll be healed, and then you get COVID, or maybe you get pneumonia in this season, or you have bad allergies or whatever it is, it's very important that you realize that that is not what Scripture tells us. So here's our final discussion question. What would it look like for us to withdraw from those who see godliness as a means for financial gain? What would that entail? Now, what I'm thinking of some unnamed, and we're not going to name names, but some unnamed televangelists out there. But there are lots of teachers that are not on TV that still teach the same kind of thinking, the same kind of mindset. And so it's just something that in my mind, this story in the Gospel of John reminds us that Jesus' healing was not always associated with someone having enough faith. Okay, so that's basically it. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think right now we're controlling what we're taking in a lot easier because we're not just out and about, or in social situations where you can't just be like, well, I don't agree with that, so I'm going to leave the room right now. That'd be pretty obvious, but we can control what we're reading, what we're watching,
That's good,
And so I think just having our antenna up, I guess, for this kind of gospel is important right now, because it sounds good, and it's like it sounds like something that I think a lot of people would hear it and be like, oh yeah, I want that. So it's tempting, I think, for.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing is that a lot of times these ministries, they claim, we were, I won't tell you who it was, but we were watching a video last night of this is why it's on my mind too, of a guy who's a well-known faith healer, and he was in this roundup where there were these faith healer teachers who were being investigated because of their private jets and their 15 summer homes, and they're millionaires. There's huge bank accounts. And this guy said in it, there was this interviewer that had cornered him somewhere. It was fascinating to watch, but this interviewer cornered him and said, how do you justify having a private jet and having all these summer homes and whatever? And he said, we have brought X million people to the Lord. That was his justification, that all of these people have come to the Lord because of our ministry. And what I thought is, well, maybe, but maybe not. It depends on what he's actually teaching. And is he teaching, faith alone in Christ alone? And many times what we notice is, with this line of thought, it's not a clear gospel. Now maybe there are some that are, and they're just confused on this point, but usually it's not a clear gospel. So not only are we seeing people take advantage of the flock, so to speak, but they're also not sharing the saving message. And so it's a real mess. And I think we're going to get off that subject now because, we may get some folks that are a little bit upset at us saying this, but the reason we're saying it is because we love you. We don't want your money. Not today anyway. Not right now, because we don't want to be hypocrites. No, but we love you, and this is a great time to think through these things. We are not necessarily meeting, so sort of we can possibly hit the reset button, because you always hit buttons with your thumb. Isn't that a weird thing? Okay, let's go to, why don't you explain what our guided prayer time is so everybody kind of knows what that is, because that's what we're going to do next.
Sure. So our guided prayer time is just a time where we can walk through the model prayer that Jesus gave us in Matthew.
This one's in Matthew, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just going to put a prompt up on the screen for just each section of the prayer and just to give you a little bit of time to pray on that subject.
Prompt. That's actually a better word than what I've been using. It's a prayer prompt, isn't it? It's kind of like a...
I thought prompt was the word you were using.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. Okay, why don't we go to that? Usually I put up a little background music, but I think my music isn't working today, so we'll just do it
So
in...
Lucas will sing instead for you.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that, and then we'll come back right at the end here in just a few minutes. Alrighty. Well, as happens sometimes, you had a good thought that you didn't say a moment ago. I thought maybe we should end with that idea. Sort of a two-piece thought.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about the flip side of this conversation, and what comes out of it sometimes is I'm sick. Does that mean that I'm under God's discipline right now for something? Which I don't think is always a bad thing. I mean, that's kind of a scary thing to tell people to think about. But I know for myself, if something's really off with, stuff, then I think it's a good time to pause and just ask God, is there anything, do I have some sin in my life that I'm kind of blind to right now that I need to own up to and confess and get me back on track? So I don't think every time you get sick it's because you're under God's discipline, but a lot of times, things happen and it's consequences from sins, that are just natural, but we can be blind to it if we don't want to admit it, if we want to.
In fact, the chapter 9 of John really deals with that well, because it begins with the disciples asking Jesus, was it this? There's a blind man. They say was it this guy's sin, or was it his parents' sin that caused him to be blind? Because their mentality was kind of on the complete opposite end from ours, and it was that if you have some kind of illness or ailment, it is because of sin. That's just what God does. And so what we believe is that it can be a result of either God trying to slow you down, disciplining you. It can be, but in John 9, what it is, Jesus specifically says, no, this happened so that the glory of God could be revealed. In fact, I think maybe Haley said that on the comments, that the point is to show who Jesus is of these miracles. The point was not how much faith did the guy have, because, anyway. So, so I think that's really good. And as far as the consequences, like this Sunday, one of the things we said in our church service was that godly manliness, still working on a term for that, but godly manliness, part of it would be that we're not drunkards. And so, but let's just take that sin of being an absolute drunkard. There's going to be consequences of that we could say simultaneously, that might be God's discipline, but it's also just the absolute consequences of being a drunkard. Like if I hit somebody in my car when I'm driving drunk, or if I destroy my family, those are consequences which maybe simultaneously are God's discipline. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, I think in James that kind of comes up. It's like, just for the sake of your physical life, do these things we're saying, because there's going to be consequences if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots to think about. Hope on the comments, I didn't see anybody tell us that we were heretics. So that's good. If you think we're heretics, that's okay. We'll talk to you. We'd like to discuss it. But thank you so much for watching. I think maybe we'll sign off with a newish song. How about "It's Good to Be Yours"? That'll be good. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow. Oh, this isn't going to work because the audio isn't working for some reason. So you could just watch this. Yeah, it's not working anyway. Hey, we're just going to leave. We're just going to go. We'll see you later.
Have a good day.
Y'all have a nice day. Bye-bye.